In a quiet garden behind an old house, there grew many flowers. Roses stood tall in the center, bright and proud. Sunflowers turned their faces toward the sky. Jasmine spread its sweet smell everywhere. They were admired every day. People stopped to look at them. They were watered carefully. They were praised often. But near the corner of the garden, close to a broken wall, there was a small flower. No one noticed. It wasn't colorful. It wasn't tall. It didn't smell strong. When the wind blew, it bent easily. When the sun was hot, it struggled. And when people walked through the garden, they passed it without even seeing it. The small flower watched the others. It saw how the roses were admired, how the sunflowers were photographed, how the jasmine was picked and taken inside the house. Inside its tiny heart, a quiet wish grew. Why does no one look at me? Why does no one care? Each day, it leaned toward the path, trying to be seen. Each day, people walked past. It felt invisible. And slowly, a thought formed inside it. Maybe I need to beg the sun to notice me. Maybe I need to stretch toward the people and ask them to look at me. The flower didn't know yet that attention is not something you beg for. It is something you grow into. The small flower began to change the way it grew. Instead of turning naturally toward the sunlight, it started leaning towards the path where people walked. Its thin stems stretched in an awkward direction, bending more each day. It wanted to be seen. When footsteps came near, it lifted itself as much as it could, even when the soil around its roots felt dry and weak. When voices passed by, it tilted its head, hoping someone would notice its effort. But the more it leaned outward, the more tired it became. Its leaves lost their strength. Its stem trembled under its own weight. Meanwhile, the other flowers remained where they were. They didn't chase the sun. They didn't reach toward people. They simply grew. They drank the water given to them. They absorbed the light they received. They focused on becoming what they were meant to be. And because of that, they became beautiful without asking for it. The small flower watched them and felt something like sadness. They don't even try, it thought. And yet everyone looks at them. One afternoon, the gardener came and began watering the plants. He walked past the small flower at first, focused on the larger ones in the center. The small flower felt a familiar ache of being ignored. But as the gardener turned back, his eyes caught the bent stem in the corner. He paused, not because the flower was shouting for attention, but because it looked fragile. He knelt down and gently adjusted the soil around it. He gave it water. He placed a small stick beside it to help it stand upright. "Grow where you are," the gardener whispered, "not where you think others will look." The flower felt the water reach its roots deeply for the first time in days. It felt the support of the soil again. It felt the warmth of the sun on its petals, not its fear of being unseen. And slowly, a new understanding began to form inside it. The more it tried to be noticed, the weaker it became. The more it focused on surviving and growing, the stronger it felt. But it was still afraid. Afraid that if it stopped leaning toward the path, it would disappear completely. So it stood there, between two choices. Keep reaching outward for attention, or finally grow inward toward its own strength. Days passed, and the small flower made a quiet decision. It stopped leaning toward the path. Not suddenly, not perfectly, but little by little, it began to straighten itself toward the sky again. At first, this felt lonely. When people walked by, it no longer stretched in their direction. It no longer tried to catch their eyes. It no longer waited for a reaction. It simply stood still. And in that stillness, something strange happened. The sun began to reach it more fully. The rain soaked deeper into its roots. The soil, no longer disturbed by its constant bending, held it more firmly. Strength returned slowly. Its stem thickened. Its leaves grew wider. Its color, once pale and unsure, deepened. No one clapped. No one noticed. But the flower felt itself changing. It was no longer growing to be seen. It was growing to be alive. One morning, a gentle breeze passed through the garden. The roses swayed proudly. The sunflowers turned their faces as always. And the small flower did not fall. It stood. For the first time, it did not need support from the stick. It did not tremble. It stood on its own. And in that moment, it realized something powerful. When it was busy asking to be noticed, it had no energy left to become beautiful. But when it focused on becoming strong, Beauty came quietly on its own. Its petals began to open more fully. Not loudly, not dramatically, just naturally. The flower did not know yet that soon someone would notice it. Not because it begged, not because it leaned, not because it cried for attention, but because it finally learned how to bloom for itself. One morning, the garden looked the same as always. The roses were still bright, the sunflowers still tall, the jasmine still spreading its sweet scent. But something new had appeared in the corner. The small flower had fully bloomed. Its petals were not loud in color, but they were deep and rich. Its shape was not dramatic, but it was perfectly balanced. It stood quietly, rooted firmly in its place, glowing softly in the sunlight. A woman walking through the garden slowed her steps. She had passed this corner many times before without noticing anything special. But today, her eyes stopped. She bent down and smiled. "This one is beautiful," she said. The flower felt no rush of pride, no sudden need to lean closer, no hunger for more eyes. It simply remained where it was, strong, still, whole. And in that calm, it finally understood what it had been searching for all along. Attention that is begged for fades quickly, but attention that comes from growth stays. It had stopped chasing looks, stopped stretching toward approval, stopped trying to be chosen. It had chosen itself instead. And by doing so, it had become something worth noticing. Not because it asked to be seen, but because it finally learned how to bloom.